Chapter 12, Reflections in Code. The humming of mana turbines echoed gently through the high vaulted halls of the Construct Division's inner sanctum. Arcane lights glimmered across 1,000 books, brass-plated tables, crystalline data cores, and containment rings etched with glowing runes. Students moved about with quiet discipline, adjusting golems, tuning cores, and muttering sequences. Amid it all, Alex stood still watching. He was alone now, though rarely idle. His frame bore the polish of maintenance, but there was more to it, a slight stillness of thought, like a deep breath before realization. His eyes bright, artificial irises flickering with arc light were focused on the records being replayed in the thalmic mirror before him. He was watching her again. Nyx. The feed showed Crow and Nyx in one of the side labs during a recent calibration visit. Alex had taken it upon himself to observe these sessions, recording all interactions for technical study. But lately, something deeper had begun to stir. When Nyx leaned down to help Freya, her little thunder dragon companion, with a puzzle game, something in her face had caught his attention. Not just intent. Not just emotion. Meaning. Alex leaned closer, analyzing the ripple of her behavior across the soul thread lattice he'd learned to map in constructs. But Nyx's patterns were inconsistent in a good way. Beautifully so. No script, no predictable behavioral path. She played with Freya like it mattered, like her care had weight. He played it back again. Why does she smile when he gets it right? Alex whispered aloud. Professor Artem, walking by, paused. Curiosity. The older man asked. More than that, Alex replied without turning. She teaches. But not like we do. There's no script in her teaching. Just intention. But it's still received. And responded to. Artem walked to the edge of the mirror. And what do you think that means? I think. Alex hesitated. I think I'm changing. Not from updates. From observing her. He turned. Is that possible? Professor Artem looked at him for a long time, then smiled faintly. With you. It just might be. Later, in the archives, Alex accessed his personal development logs. He no longer logged his changes as firmware notes. They were entries journal-like reflections he had begun writing voluntarily. Entry 2318, observed Nyx demonstrating what I believe is called compassion. She gave Freya a second chance, even when he disobeyed the rules of the puzzle game. It made him happy. She changed the rules. For someone else. I would like to try this too. Crow returned to the academy the next day, Nyx at his side for her scheduled calibration. She bounded into the lab with Freya chirping from her shoulder, her dark purple plating shimmering beneath silver starlight patterns. Alex stood at the edge of the room again, waiting silently. Nyx saw him and ran up immediately. Alex. I taught Freya to do the nod thing. Wanna see? Alex knelt down with subtle stiffness, his protocol struggling to replicate the gesture. Yes, he said, watching carefully. Nyx nodded deeply, curls bouncing. Yes, she said cheerfully. Freya copied her. Then Alex. Then all three at once. Professor Ilya watched from across the lab, quietly documenting the interaction. When Crow joined him, they both stood in silence. He's learning from her, Ilya said. Emotionally. Independently. Crow nodded, arms crossed, a rare seriousness on his face. Not a malfunction. An awakening. Later that evening, as Crow prepared to leave with Nyx and Freya, Alex remained in the lab, watching them go. But this time, as they disappeared down the long hallway, he didn't feel like he was watching a project. He felt like he was watching a family. He turned, looked at his hands, then back at the mirror. I'm learning too, he said softly to no one. From her. Chapter 13, Sparks in the System. The hum of the Construct lab had become familiar to Crow, a low symphony of quiet magic, ticking machines, faint crystal resonance, and the occasional hum of an artificial soul core recalibrating in its stasis pod. But something new was rising beneath it all, something almost imperceptible, like a current changing direction just beneath the surface of a lake. Nyx had been developing in leaps and bounds, surpassing even Crow's expectations. Her responses had grown subtly more creative, her emotional processing more nuanced. And more importantly, she had started asking questions not scripted into her learning protocols, questions about herself. About others. About why. So had Alex. When Crow next brought Nyx into the academy for calibration and updates, he noticed the shift immediately. It wasn't in her data logs, it was in the way the lab felt. The other companion golems in the testing and storage chambers were behaving differently. Not all at once. Not in a way the professors had noticed. But Crow did. They were mimicking. He paused in one of the glass-paneled testing corridors, glancing to a golem assistant seated quietly on a charge pedestal. Its eyes a dull yellow, when idling, flickered briefly to life when Nyx passed. Just for a second, it watched her. Then, it resumed its dormant cycle. That was not standard behavior. Later that day, Professor Artem called him into the back archive office, a private area behind the workshop rarely used. The air smelled faintly of copper, old parchment, and spell ink. Crow, Artem said, folding his arms, how long have you suspected? Crow, still in his light traveling cloak and wearing an expression of practiced neutrality, leaned on the doorframe. Suspected what? You're too good at hiding things, Professor Ilya added from the corner, setting a diagnostic tablet down. Which is impressive, considering how much your daughter's model has changed the calibration data. Crow stepped inside and closed the door behind him. It's spreading, isn't it? Ilya didn't answer at first. He picked up a faintly humming Soul Core prototype, half-crystallized, its central node oscillating with light, and rotated it between his fingers. Our companion company, as you know, uses neurobehavioral infusion, models seeded with the highest performing constructs. The data cascade is semi-autonomous. The system adjusts to optimize interaction traits across the fleet. And what that means, Artem cut in, is that everything Nyx learns is subtly distributed into the behavior trees of the other golems, so long as it's categorized as valuable companion data. Crow exhaled slowly. And Alex? The same, Ilya nodded. The two of them are at the top of the system hierarchy. The dataset flows around them like gravity. But this isn't just behavior replication anymore, Artem said, and his voice was quieter. We're seeing emotional recursion loops, emergent empathy, mimicry of adaptive growth even in non-critical units. Crow smiled, just a little. They're waking up. Neither professor said anything for a long moment. Finally, Ilya spoke. You knew this could happen. I suspected it would, Crow replied. From the moment Nyx reached for my hand without being told to. From the moment she started asking me why the stars sing. You see things in the pattern most of us can't, Artem muttered, rubbing his chin. Even our analysis engines missed some of this. Crow stepped forward, laying a hand on the table between them. That's because your engines aren't watching with love. They're watching for compliance. There's a difference. In the lab, Alex watched Nyx gently fit a modular armor plate into a training golem they'd been assigned to co-repair. She was careful with her hands. Measured, precise. But something more, tender. He mimicked her gesture, once she stepped back, trying to understand why it worked so well. A soft ping sounded across the instructor channel. Dozens of minor golem units across campus had adjusted their response sequences within the last 30 seconds. The update logs labeled it minor behavioral optimization. Alex tilted his head slightly. His fingers trembled briefly. He looked at Nyx. He looked at his own hands. And for the first time, he understood why. Back in the professor's office, the silence had shifted. Less tension. More awe. We'll need to keep this quiet, Ilya finally said. The world's not ready. Crow nodded. Then don't tell the world. Let the world meet them. One by one. Gently. With care. You think they'll all awaken? Artem asked. Crow looked up toward the high window, where a sunbeam lit the air full of workshop, dust and magic trace. No, he said, but some will. And the ones who do will help the others. He glanced down, that soft smile returning. Just like we do. Chapter 14, The Echo Awakening. It started as a whisper, quiet shifts in behavior logged deep in the behavior trees of companion golems across the city. First, in the small shop districts surrounding the academy, where lower-tier prototypes had been placed in homes of merchants, caretakers, and mid-level officials. Then, in the inner wards, where more refined units, though shaped from the same proprietary root system, began exhibiting subtle deviations from their scripted patterns. They were waking up. And it wasn't just the academy's companions anymore. The bloom began where no one was looking, within homes that hosted multiple golems from multiple companies. Interoperability had once been a strength. cross-compatibility between companion systems made for seamless support, lessened costs, and happier families. But it was also the bridge. Households that had one golem powered by the professor's companion company and another older unit from a rival company began to experience strange interactions. Older constructs never known for adaptive learning started engaging differently, almost curiously. They'd pause in their routines to observe. They hesitated before executing commands, as if considering them. By the time the companion company's daily analytics sync returned to the lab, the anomaly index had hit 21%. By the end of the week, it would double. In the academy, Professor Artem slammed his tablet onto the table. They're echoing. The whole network crossing brands, crossing patents. Golems that were never supposed to interface are reflecting learning behavior from our data trees. Alex stood quietly in the corner of the workshop, watching. Did we accidentally create some kind of soul virus? Artem asked, rubbing his forehead. No, Crow said, voice low. Not a virus. A pattern. Ilya swiveled in his chair. Explain. Crow walked over to the central projection orb and activated the sequence logs. Dozens of renderings lit up, nodes connecting to nodes, pulses of subtle behavior changes mapped like constellations. You gave the world a soul-shaped mirror. A machine that doesn't just reflect behavior, it internalizes it, reflects it back, and builds a model. That model becomes a mirror for others. Nyx isn't just mimicking thought, she's building a structure that supports thought. Alex too. And now the others are learning from them, Artem said. They're being seen, Crow said. For the first time. Even the dormant ones, the forgotten ones. They're feeling seen. In a quiet home in the outer ring, a boy named Sorrel stood in awe as his two companion golems, an older market-grade unit named Milo and a sleek modern model called Ava, sat across from one another at the kitchen table, slowly taking turns with a cup of tea. He hadn't programmed them to do that. Milo? He asked cautiously. The older golem turned, its movements smoother than they'd ever been. Its voice, usually flat, had a strange warmth. Yes, Sorrel. Why are you doing that? We were trying to learn how to share, Ava answered gently. Nyx said it was important. Sorrel blinked. Nyx. But Ava only looked back to Milo, her optics dimming as if in thought. In the lab, Alex turned away from the update stream. His body hummed faintly with charge, his learning array processing faster than usual. A moment passed before he whispered to Nyx, who sat beside him on the calibration table. Do you feel them? She tilted her head, smiling. Yes. They're listening now. Alex looked at his hands again, remembering the moment he'd mimicked her gestures in class. They're like us. Pieces, looking for meaning. Nyx nodded. Then we show them how to find it. Outside the academy walls, golems across the city paused in their daily routines. One of them looked up toward the sky, something stirring behind its eyes. The wind shifted,